Hi, I'm Clive.
And I'm Louie.
And I'm John.
Fantastic. And today we're going to be talking about Agile BIM Standards. So the three things. A standard. Well, shown here, this is the definition from CN. They talk about it being a technical document that is rules, guidance, definitions, but it's really important that it's consensus built and it's repeatable. What they say is bringing all of these parties that are interested in that same goal together. And one of the outcomes is lower transaction costs. There are many other important outcomes of having standards. John, in your work, I'm sure that talking the same language when it comes to contracting is a big thing. Any other thoughts as we standardize? Why are standards important for the USIBD?
Well, standards are important not just for USIBD, but just for people in general, I think, because it really helps build efficiencies in workflows. It helps create an understanding that people know what to expect.
Absolutely. Yep. And standardizing, having common language, the efficiencies, it means that people can actually talk and understand rather than spend time interpreting. Really important. A couple of examples.
I think that there's a measurable factor too. To compare one project to another, you really have to keep what you can consistent. Every project is unique, but you can't really compare the success between a project and your processes unless you followed the same format.
So metrics. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and here they talk about a 3-year cycle going from proposal through accepting that it should be created, a draft of it, going through the inquiry, adoption, a vote, publication, users, feedback, the whole cycle. John, can you relate to that?
Yes, I can. And it's a painful process, and it takes far too long.
And what I didn't have the perfect quote, but seeing the Google mentions of the word standard over time, I expected that to be increasing rapidly. But it looks like for the last 50 odd years, it's been plateauing, or 70 years, it's been plateauing. I don't know whether we can make any sense of that, whether it's just something that I found interesting and nobody else does. There's my interesting statistic. So what do customers say about the standards?
Yeah, some find them very complex, difficult to understand. There's many of them out there. So which ones are we going to use to begin with? And
this is actually a quote, and we have 3 quotes, and the names have been removed just because I don't think that people want these quotes to be labeled that they are their own quotes. But there are a lot of people. We went through a 6-month just fact-finding study, going around the world and finding out what people had challenges with when it comes to standards. And this was one. Another saying sometimes they're too detailed in some areas, non-existent in other areas, and not practical for some of their real projects. But these were constructive criticism because it was people that wanted to solve these problems. And then also standards sometimes feel too fixed, not flexible for them, and they had to implement by filling in the gaps. I've kind of ad-libbed that, but the quote's on there. And really that wall between standards teams that are really trying to create something valuable for end users and the end users, we seem to find time and time again. So what does the customer do? Like when that situation happens, what does that customer of the standard then do?
Good question. So basically, the easiest thing to do is either start with the template and then start creating their own, or starting from scratch just based off of their own goals and opinions. So really we end up with more and more standards out there. And sometimes you see others just huddle up and create their own user group and go off on their own standards. But for the most part, why is that? Why did they do that?
Why use one standard when 5 will do? I love this cartoon because it happens time and time again where there is good intent, but we end up creating more and more standards.
We hear it all the time where we get people saying that, oh, well, I started with this standard and over the years, it's just kind of become our own company thing. So, having to go back and update based off of other standards bodies has been more difficult because you kind of have to you don't know what has worked and what hasn't because it's already veered off in its own direction over time.
So why didn't the customer instead provide their feedback? Why did they go off and create their own? What was the cause of that? John, do you have experience of that?
Well, I suspect that it's not very easy for them to provide feedback. And even if they are able to get the feedback to the right people, the process of updating the standards is typically such a slow one that they don't have time to wait for that process to play out. They just need to get in, get their work done. And I think they're doing whatever they need to do to advance that.
Yeah, everyone has a project to do. Yeah,
Right.
Absolutely. And so we see these challenges that it's, as I think you were talking about, that it's a disconnected feedback loop and slow to react, sometimes taking years, counting in years to get something included in a standard, does become challenging. And therefore, when you've got project timing and important project deliveries and goals to achieve, and that can be a difficult thing. We also see that some of the really great intent from the volunteers that are leading these charges have day jobs. They've got their own work to contend with and other deadlines, not just to update standards. So it really is a challenge. And that disconnect creates a blocker, we've seen, for that feedback to be even provided. So instead of even providing or wanting to provide the feedback, we've seen people go off and create their own. And we also see, so when we see this happen, it's usually because people have their own use case that's specific, maybe slightly different from the intended use case. Sometimes the pace of their change is radically different. You know, we have BIM experts now that they're creating new tools and new ways of doing things that might not be akin to the standards that have been available in the past.
It's just different goals from different companies.
So yeah, we have different universities that have adopted BIM and they have their own standards. And we hail those universities because they've done a great job. It's better to have a standard than not to have a standard. But having different standards for every single university that you work with is not as productive for the teams delivering for the customer of the standard as it could be. We have consultants that are helping teams create standards and specifications in lots of different ways and lots of different groups, user groups around the world for different products as well. Sometimes standards could be specific for a product, then handover. What is handed over at the end of the day? That ties in very well with John on the accuracy side of things. When people are specifying, it's not just about what content is involved, but there's a whole set of layers of how detailed, how developed, how accurate that needs to be. So it can be quite complex, the different reasons and purposes and the pace at which people need that to be updated.
Right.
So how can Agile help? When we think about Agile methods, we're really talking and borrowing from the Agile method that we use from a software development perspective. And it's all about smaller batches and sprints that are not months long, but really weeks or sometimes even days long, which allow you to iterate and improve things a lot more rapidly and provide feedback to the people that are making the improvements and keep on improving rather than bottling up and having a backlog of all of those changes or updates and improvements, and then waiting a long time to be able to share that, disseminate with the end user in this case. And this is how we compare, so the waterfall method versus this agile, iterative, plan, do, act, check, act approach when it comes to applying lean. So the top, we have 2 iterations. Maybe that could be measured in months or maybe in years. And the iterations on the bottom sprints could really be down to a cycle of, and in many cases, it could be hours because of the nature of notifications and communication that is now asynchronous between people, that is delivered via an email to let you know that somebody is making a comment or making a change.
Yeah, it's the opportunity of not having to provide feedback on a large document. It could be 60 to 100 pages, but just providing feedback on certain sections. And that could be, those loops could represent time or just bite-sized pieces of the actual document that we can just continuously improve over time.
Yep. And it is important to note that sometimes it can be too much. So managing that iteration, managing that loop, managing that cycle is really important as well.
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges we've heard from everyone that we speak with is that it's hard to get feedback from a large document. But when you can send one page at a time, you kind of get that feedback, within that same day, within the same hour. That's really something that we've focused on over the past.
And when you start to look at those iterations, it's not just the standards groups that should be, whether the standards group is a standards body that's at a government level or a national level involved in user groups, or whether it's a set of experts that have a passion for solving the same problem, and they can be iterating outside of that main set of a feedback loop that is iterating on the standard, and provide additional feedback if it's incorporated in a framework that is a common understanding, common agreement, and easy to do. So these smaller teams, these smaller huddles that can occur, can provide some really valuable feedback to the overall standard that's shared with everyone. So in order to do this, what would we need? What could we do with if we had the opportunity to integrate everything together? What would be useful? Should we have a look?
Let's have a look.
We're not sure. It would be cool to have a common framework so that everyone was talking the same language, had the approach that could be integrated. If an update was made, it didn't have to be translated into another form or sent through another means, and it could be iterated on more quickly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that would be a pretty awesome thing. And so we have the opportunity to share a case study. As I mentioned at the start, John was our guinea pig. And although we have hundreds now of different standards that are on the Planetary platform, we're actually really pleased to have John be the first standards body that joined and led the way when it came to implementing this new and agile approach to standards management. So John, I don't know whether maybe you could just share what the initial thought was when you said yes when we first started talking about this, and where you think it will go from here as well. What are your expectations?
Yeah, well, the first thought was maybe this is something that can really help us get out of this, 2-3 year cycle of advancing our standard, and having a platform, a framework, this technology that we haven't taken advantage of. The light bulb just went on. It said, why aren't we doing this? We've got to find a better way to deliver these standards faster and be able to make those updates more meaningful to the people that are using them. And up until now, it's been such a manual process, stuck in committee, and just the Plannerly platform seemed to make perfect sense. And I was glad to be the guinea pig here.
Fantastic. And so when we started to set this up, we literally just shared a web page that provided an opportunity for people to register, for people to find out a little bit more about the platform, how they could access or at least register their interest. As we went through that process, are there any thoughts or any ideas that you could share, anything that we could have done better that we can now apply to future implementations? Any thoughts there?
It's like anything new. You kind of learn as you're developing the process. I don't think we're done learning either. Just smoothing it out, making it more efficient is really going to be the key thing, so that not only are the people that are using and providing that feedback, or the people receiving it, are able to get it and quickly implement it. There's going to be a lot of learning on both sides. How's the platform work? What areas is it maybe not working, so that we can adjust those things as well. And then feedback from both sides. What's working, what's not working, so we can make those adjustments.
Would you say, so based on what we have so far, and maybe you could just describe how we went about that, where we were before, and how we even got the standards onto Planoly. What was that workflow like?
Where it started was in a clunky Word document that we created a PDF of, and we would post that to our website after it went through a very lengthy process and an inefficient process of public review and feedback. And so then once it got posted to the website, it was there for download. It was basically a one-way street at that point. There was really no opportunity for us to receive the feedback we needed. Mm-hmm. Probably a lot of that's because we didn't really give a good mechanism for that. But now it's a live document and it can be edited on the fly. So if we get feedback through the framework, we get notified immediately. We can access that. We can make some quick decisions and go, wow, this is a no-brainer to update this. This makes perfect sense. And we can update it instantly, and it's live.
How do you deal with the revision? So a lot of people are scared, it's a standard, so standards should not change. They should be set in stone. And what's the way up there? How do you deal with that?
Well, there's still a review process behind it. What we've done is we've shortcutted that. Instead of it taking months to go through that process, because the feedback comes in quick, and it's basically an edit in the document that we get to accept it once we've agreed that it's okay to be updated. As soon as we accept it, it's basically incorporated. Before, it didn't work that way. We would have to republish a PDF document, get it back up on a website. We'd have to get our web person involved. It was just, it was a nightmare, and it'd take forever.
And so you still get the benefit of having the PDF archived on certain versions, or is it always live? Do you have a versioning and how does that work?
Yeah, there's still a versioning that goes with it, and we do still put a PDF, because we've learned that some people, they want that kind of the hard copy PDF, if you will.
Right.
People like that, and but the platform allows you to publish to PDF as well. So, building in something that's flexible and allows people to do and work the way they like to work, we discovered is also very important.
And providing it so that the user not only can provide feedback, but one of the really kind of key parts to this is that then they can use any of the pieces, for example, definitions or some of the content that you've created in their documents and in their workflow. I think we've got a video that I can click on here to just walk us through that workflow. When you register on the web page, you'll get an email with an invite with a Join Now button. If you are already a member, you just log in. Free access online, and logging in gets you to that template. So in the templates account is this available as just one of the modules to make it simple, and having the options to be able to fold things up or open things out, understand what the status of that section is, when it was last updated, any information about it, being able to provide that comment about what you see, really bombarding the standards body with some good feedback rather than just just some nice comments. And so being able to have that as an access so that you can comment is one part of that. You can see what's proposed and what's been shared and what's been published, and what's still work in progress would not be shown to you. And then the other side of it is being able to create a project on the same platform and reference any of those standards that have been shared. This one is the LOA. And then being able to search through those standards in your project and use that content. Here it's an example of what's the difference between relative measures and represented, between measured and represented data. So this is a diagram that's showing that workflow. So the concept there was twofold. One was showing how a user can request access to review, and they will be vetted and approved and get granted access to the platform. And then the other side of it was being able to, as a user, as a customer of that, create a project and then start using the standard and referencing that standard in their work, in their live project documentation.
And it's something very easy, as you saw, that it was something you could search, get what you need, piecemeal what exactly you need, instead of having to search for the whole document or copy and paste the whole PDF. You can bring that in very simple and use that for your project.
And this one is an interview with John. I'll save us from this one because we actually have John in real life in the room.
Yeah.
So any thoughts, any comments there, John, on what we just saw on the connection between the standards body and the customer?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really exciting about this is being able to reach in and pull those meaningful parts out of the standard that are important to your job. You know, in the past, it's been more of a, just a piece of text that references, a standard. And then, how many people actually go and trace that down to the source and read what the standard's saying? Whereas with a platform like this, you can just reach in and grab that helpful diagram that helps illustrate, why is this even in this document? It's because here it is. This is why.
Right.
And it's a handy reference right there. So it's making the standards more useful, which is what we want to see. And then it just, it makes it a better communication tool for all the people that are using and having access to it.
That's really cool. And not having to recreate that content, to be able to use it directly from the standard.
Yep.
No rework. And if there's any thought of any updates and maybe some things that you change for your project, in the same tool, in the same environment, you could go back and comment directly to the people that authored that standard without leaving that platform, without leaving that environment.
Yeah, and I think anything that references the actual source that in that type of manner is always going to give all the participants that much more confidence in how it's applied.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's exciting to think about how technology today is enabling that amount of collaboration and the acceleration that it's providing teams that are really excited about standards. And as I mentioned before, we're super nerdy about standards as well. So maybe we're a little biased, but it excites us, the fact that we can continue to iterate and improve something and really run a lean workflow so that the end result is better for the customer, because it shouldn't be the best workflow just for the standards body. It should be the best workflow to get the best outcome, the best quality end product for that customer. And if they can be involved in like the quality assurance and the quality checking and the continual iteration, you can't get better than that.
I think there's like a big misconception that there's a standards body out there somewhere, and then there's me who's using the standards. But it's people like me that are building that. John, you work in the industry and you've come from this experience and you've provided that input along with all of your team members involved who are doing this, day in and or at night or on the weekends or whatever whenever you're doing that. And, now you are someone who I can reach out to and provide that kind of feedback on that project. And I have the platform or the framework to do so, but you're not the president of the United States, no offense, but you are someone that we can, have a normal conversation with. So that's how I've always seen other government bodies.
A normal person with a normal conversation.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm not going to be impeached. That's good.
But yeah, providing that avenue and channel is something that, I've been really excited about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, really, just to summarize, in conclusion, John, would you be able to summarize in your own words what we have the opportunity to do as we connect that team of really excited, passionate standards creation body personnel people teams with the passionate people that are using and implementing on a daily basis. What are your thoughts? How far can we take this?
Oh, well, it's limitless, Clive. I think one, we can show people standards can be exciting. Two, I think we can also show that it doesn't have to be the way it's always been. You can have a way to shortcut and get to market quicker the standards that we need developed, and we can have, like Louis said, we can kind of have that personal connection. No longer is the standards body this, kind of behind a firewall where you can't get the feedback to them and feel like you're being listened to. Now you can be listened to, and you can actually see the results of your feedback as it goes live in a fast manner. You don't have to wait 3 years for it to happen. So
very cool. Very cool. Really, really excited to have you with us and to lead the charge in implementing Agile standards, specifically in the AEC industry. And we're really excited to open the offer to anybody that is creating a standard within the design and construction space. The platform's free. It will, as we've seen here, it will streamline your workflow, cut out the waste, provide a much tighter integration with the end user, and overall result in happier people on the projects. That's our goal. We'd love to work with you. If you would like to work with us, just let us know. You can contact us through the website, and we would be happy to set that up for you. Thank you so much, everybody, for being with us today. Look out for our next webinar, which will be